Today we talk about building cities.
Charles, I think it's time. I'm moving on to the big city.
Which city?
Doesn't matter. The big city where I'll be rich and famous.
You know, it's like more expensive to live in cities than it is like out here.
What? What do you mean more expensive?
You know, like the rent's higher and things are just higher in general. Like, have you ever been to near the airports and stuff like that where the gas prices are like super high? And
I didn't think this through. Can I crash at your place? I don't have a place to sleep anymore because I was going to move to the big city. Hello, welcome to What is Tabletop, where Frank is now homeless because Charles won't let him crash on his couch. I'm Frank.
I'm Charles, and I will let you crash on my couch.
Yes. All right, we're good. We're saved. Podcast is saved.
Podcast is
Indeed. Frank's not moving to the big city. This isn't a secret announcement of like Frank and Charles are splitting up and Frank's moving to New York. I don't know. What would be the big city? Orlando?
Or
Yeah.
Orlando here, yeah.
Yeah, but who wants to
Or
move to
Tampa.
Who wants to move to those places?
Jacksonville.
I would only move to Jacksonville if I was somehow a politician for Florida, and golly, I don't want to be a politician. But if you want to be a politician in a city, that's where, dang, I had a good thing. Anyway, like, comment, and subscribe for better segues than that.
Every like and comment you leave helps Frank develop better skills at making these
Seriously,
segues.
it does, actually. Like, I get slightly better every time.
Just slightly.
Just a little bit better.
A little bit.
That's right.
A little bit.
What did we talk about, Charles?
So we're talking about building cities. We had a small town, how to make small towns in your campaign. Now we're going to talk about, we're moving up just a little bit bigger. Like, how do we build cities in our campaigns?
So you lay one brick, and then you lay another brick. And then you just keep laying bricks, and then eventually those
You're just
bricks...
another brick in the wall?
Exactly. And then you just build a wall. And that's the city.
And then you Pink Floyd it.
And then you Pink Floyd it. We don't need no education. Indeed. Obviously, if you're doing what we talked about in the last video, where you're just starting with a small town and then expanding, then you naturally are eventually going to be like, well, we've done everything to do in this small village.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do next? Well, you're going to go to a bigger village, a.k.a. a city. So really, just do what we talked about in that last video, but with a bigger city. That's it. Like, comment, and... No, I'm kidding. We're going to do more.
I was really scared where he was going with this. So, why do big city when small town work fine?
Yes. Why words hard when words small work well?
Yes.
Honestly, it's because cities tend to have more opportunities to do things.
Absolutely.
And not just role-playing opportunities. You can even have quests. You can have a base of operations, right? Eventually, especially now that the new 5th edition rules have official rules for bastions. Spoiler alert, the old 5th edition rules had official rules for bastions, but we're not going to get into that. Now that we have those kind of rules, having a city is great, right? Waterdeep Dragon Heist. It takes place all in one city. And it's a really fun thing to do because you eventually get your own little tavern that the party gets to like manage and move, but then you also do all these other things. That's cool. It's one of the more popular adventures. You'll see even a lot of adventures like start in a city of some kind because it's really good to establish the atmosphere, the lore of the culture and the world and the nation that you're in, right? Because a city is like a microcosm of the nation to some extent.
Right, yeah. Whereas in a small town, you're not getting as much of that. You might just be getting kind of one group of people, or just whereas in the city, you're going to have people who are traveling, merchants who are coming and going. More politics. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more involved than a small town is.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to get into when we talk about cities. Is obviously not just do a village but bigger. it's a little bit more than that.
Because again, that'd be like saying, Winter Park, versus like Orlando, actually.
Right.
So Winter Park would be like a kind of a small subsection of Florida, whereas Orlando encompasses a lot more of that, and there you see a lot more variety.
All the crazies are in Orlando.
All the crazies. But you also have like really nice buildings. There are historical things. There are a lot more things there than you would find in a smaller town.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is a lot of cities started as a village that then had a reason people kept moving to that village to get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? We even have an example in Florida. It's called Celebration. It was meant to be a place for all the Disney employees to live at, and it didn't work. But then what happened is because it's so close to Disney, it just naturally became a bigger and bigger place. And so now it's its own city outside of Orlando, outside of Disney. Ironically enough, there are people who actually live in the place that Disney is in. Like literally, like they pay rent and live in there, and it's insane. And that's like the nth degree Disney adult is the ones who live on property.
Yes.
Yes.
I couldn't do that.
But no, like a lot of smaller cities have started popping up around Disney because Disney employs so many people that naturally you're going to get things like, I think it's like New Horizon, and obviously we have Celebration, but then there's like a few other sections here and there that are growing at such a rapid rate. They're becoming their own city. So like instead of having to drive 20, 30 minutes to go to the grocery store, well, now they're going to build a new grocery store because look at all the people living here. And that's now a reason to stay. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing you're thinking about with a city is they used to have to go far away, but now there's enough people living in this section. We can have whatever they used to go far away for locally. And that's how the cities naturally grow, is because you'll have more people living there, and then businesses start to develop, which allow more people to live there, and then that's how they get the cities.
Yeah, basically it starts off with just commerce and trading and stuff like that, and eventually whenever that starts doing really well, and like you realize you're a hub, and then that's when you start, people like, oh, they start putting down roots here. It's like, hey, we're going to live here now because we have all these things we need. We have everything we need here. There's no need for us to leave.
Yes, exactly. City states are fascinating, especially if you look at throughout history. This is not a history podcast. If you want it to be a history podcast, find another one. We're not gonna. I mean, I could.
He for sure could.
100%. That was my degree, so I kind of know a lot about history, especially like old school city states and how they formed, and then they eventually became their own groups of people and stuff like that. But,
I mean, that does have a relevance to what we're talking about. So
I would say if you're gonna start Willard building your own city, have the thing that everyone is coming for. Now,
spice.
What kind of spice are we talking? Like dune spice or like spice that you put on food?
Spice you put on food.
Okay. Sure, I guess. It's a spice mill. You could have it be a spice mill.
Or like a specific mineral, gold. You know, like
that's what I was going to say is it can be a naturally occurring resource in that area for sure. And that's why people are staying there, because they're harvesting that naturally occurring resource. It doesn't have to be. Right. You can, like, for example, everyone thinks of, when they think of Rome, they think of the Vatican and the Colosseum. Two things that were not originally there. They're not reoccurring things.
Yeah.
They're not resources. But because the city got to a point of such stature, that's where those things were put, and now that's what how they associate with.
Right. Yeah. It was a hub. It was a central hub for hey, we want to see these awesome fights that people died from. I guess.
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Glad we don't do that anymore to some extent. And now they just don't die, but eventually they die. Yeah. Anyway, the big game's today, right?
The big game is today. We are recording this on Super Bowl Sunday.
We're not allowed to talk about that. It's apparently copywritten, so we'll cut that.
Is it really?
Yeah, the word Super Bowl. Yeah.
It is a big game Sunday.
Yeah, the band of the Eagles versus I couldn't think of a better name for Travis Kelce's posse or whatever.
Yeah, those guys.
The Kelce posse versus the old Eagles band. I'm rooting for the Eagles band. They got some hits that I like. So they'll be good.
All right, so we figured out what our city has, or what this area has that other areas don't.
Yeah.
So that is our focus. That is going to be like our center piece to kind of expand upon. What other things would we need in the city? What makes it a city versus a town?
Like we talked about in our small village, that you have some individuals that you need to flesh out a little bit. You don't have to flesh out everybody, but you need to have like 3 people roughly that are important NPCs that the party's going to keep going to. Now take that and flesh them out even more. So instead of 3 people, maybe they're factions or groups of some kind.
Right.
And you can watch our faction videos to go a little bit more in depth there. Yeah. But the idea is you take those kinds, and now it's 2, 3, 4, 5, however many factions you want in the city. And it can be things like literally they are trying to see who's in charge of the city, but it's all like in the shadows kind of a thing, where it's like everyone knows like the mayor is secretly being employed by the Thieves Guild, and the Mage Society is trying to figure out the best way to get rid of that without it making it obvious that they've taken a power play. Right. You can do something like that. You could even have it be like the city guard does not like the thieves. And it's just like very Aladdin, like very obvious, whole new world situation going on right there. Where it's like, it's a little more obvious. Like literally they are like, here are the Thieves Guild members. They are wanted for a lot of money.
Wanted posters.
We are the city guard who wants them. Those are how your 2 factions are. Like that's more overt and obvious.
Yeah.
Versus the whole like political side of it, where it's like all more like done in the shadows and stuff like that. But ultimately you want whatever factions it's to be, whatever the main themes of that city are, you want it to be on display the second they walk in. So if I'm describing it and I'm like, you guys walk in and like, oh, it's a city and they got walls, and then they're like, you're going to the shop, yay, and like you go to the shop, and it takes like a session or 2 before it's like, and the Thieves Guild is wanted by the guards. That's not as interesting as you guys walk in, you notice a surprising amount of bounties strung up, And as you start to read them, they go up in increments talking about this guild, the Red Hand. That's really odd. And that's all you have to say. And you're like, huh, well, now we have a conversation point to ask an NPC. What's this thing about the Red Hand? They keep stealing from me. I don't like these guys. I talk with the accent from Jersey for some reason here in this fantasy city.
Yeah.
And then what's nice is you can have like, maybe you have the merchants who are against it because their stuff's getting stolen. Maybe you have one merchant who's like, actually, I'm kind of pro them stealing from everybody. And, because the nobles hoard too much of the wealth. And then you can
stick it to the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on like what kind of a theme you want. It could literally just be the thieves are just straight up thieves.
So it sounds like what you want, you have your resource or whatever it is that brings in
People.
Commerce and people. Yeah. And then you want to have possibly factions involved where they're warring or competing, or there's something going on where it kind of weaves itself into a story, into a narrative,
right,
to give your player character something to investigate or do while they're in this city.
That's the big thing is if your PCs do not have something to do when they enter in, what is the point of this place?
I mean, well, and that's the thing too, because you want it to be more than just a shopping, session. Because shopping you could do anywhere. You could do in a small town. You could literally have a caravan passing doing that.
I will say what I do is I like to have a different amount of quests that are like, here are random quests, and hopefully they tie back into the greater narrative. Because obviously the PCs came to the city for some reason. It could just be like, this is the nearest big city, and that's where they're going. If that's the case, you want to have quests that, again, tie into the central theme of the city. Like, maybe, again, thieves versus city guard, or politics or religion. Like the gods are warring, and so like the people inside are warring as well. That stuff you can do. Right. But you need to have quests that like then get your PCs involved in that. So again, it could be as simple as like a wanted poster where it's like, cool, we're going to try to find this guy. And maybe it's not an important NPC, but it's someone who can give them more information. Right. Oh, I had a situation where I had in my lore that Onis used to roam the land, but then were basically wiped out. So then I had in one of my quests, an Oni tries to steal a baby. That is what happens in Oni lore. They steal babies and eat them. And I'm like, sure, why not? I'll have that. And so I had them go to a fortune teller. Like they just went to a fortune teller on their own because of course they did. And so I'm like, cool, here's how the fortune teller is going to work. She's going to give them one of these random quests. And it just happened to be the Oni one. And then from there, they were so preoccupied with the Oni, I had that slowly lead into this other thing of like, there's a cult that's actually running things in the city. And so what they thought, like the cult is always pushing towards like, it's the Oni that's doing all these evil things, not us. The party eventually like learned who the Oni was, and they were like, oh, this is actually one of our friends. Oh no. Like he's being framed for all this stuff. Oh, it's actually the political leaders, and they all have like this cult, and now we've like gone underground because we were chasing the Oni, but it turns out we actually found their cultish stuff, and they got to start putting the puzzle pieces together, and that was a fun reveal.
Yeah, what is nice too about a city versus a small village is that with a city you can have other areas, like other ways to get quests. Yes. Lots of times in small towns you're getting the tavern, or there might be a board, maybe the mayor's.
You can literally have someone steal from one of the, like, let me tell you, if you have someone pickpocket them, like your party, they're going to go find that guy.
it could be like the smallest amount of, what was it, copper? Is that the smallest amount in D&D?
Yeah.
So like you could, if someone steals a copper from one of your players, they will go to the ends of the earth. It could be even like just a trinket, just something like so unimportant that their characters just happen to have during character creation. If that gets stolen, if I know players, they will go to the ends of the earth.
And then what's interesting is you have it where they're like looking for the guy, and then maybe it's on a timer, maybe it's not. But they find the guy, and he's been killed by this imp. And you're like, well, what's an imp doing here? And now, boom, you got your quest unlocked, right?
100%.
And now the imp's stealing the money, and you're like, but the imp disappeared. Now we got to find this dang imp, right? Yeah. That could be as simple as how you do it there.
What really makes the city special? Like, what makes them special?
Yeah, again, I think it's really this big thing you have going on. So I had a situation where my players, I had opened the world up to them. And I'm like, you have this syndicate that you have to defeat. And you have 3 plot hooks that you can go. One of them's a pirate. One of them is roughly in this area. And one of them is roughly in this area of the world, right? Mm-hmm. And so naturally, they're like, cool, we're going to go to this area. And as they go, random encounter pirates, and they're like, we're going after the pirate. And so they change. Long story short, half of the party TPKs, the other half escapes barely, and they're set on course to a random city. So I have to think of a random city off the top of my head. Well, luckily, one of the party members who TPK'd told me ahead of time that I want to make a pro wrestler-like character. He's going to be based off of Macho Man Randy Savage. And I'm like, cool. Okay, they're going to show up. And I'm thinking, perfect. This guy's good at improv. I'm going to have them show up to his hometown. Okay, now let me think really quick. Again, this is happening within the session.
Yeah.
So I'm having to think real quick. And I'm like, I need to think of something. Perfect. I got it. What if the thing that gets people to go here is they have like a coliseum, but it's WWE wrestling?
Yeah, it's not to the death. It's just for straight up entertainment.
Right. And so then that's an easy way to get the party involved, because it's like, oh, we don't have our money. We were just robbed. It's like, well, if you come join me, brother, in the ring.
In the ring.
We can get some money, and then we can have a place to stay. And it was great, because then they stay there. They interact with a few more NPCs. And then I got to have this cool, slowly developing plot of like, well, actually, the city's been overtaken by the guy currently in charge, and maybe you could help this one random shop owner who should be in charge, overthrow him. And then that was a cool thing. And then simultaneously, again, because I'm a good GM, I brought plot hooks to them because they were going to be there. So I had one of the syndicate members show up and it started attacking them on site. And so that made the party then like, oh, okay, that's right. We have to go after these syndicate members. Oh, how convenient they came to us. Well, now let's fight them,
Yeah.
And then so that allowed them to have a break to some extent from the narrative in the city, but then I tied it back together to the main plot.
I think it also really opens up the rest of the world. Like you said, it's kind of a micro representation of the wider world around them. It focuses more on, again, not just the people, but the mentalities that are in the city, because the way people think in a city are different than the way people think in a small village. It's more of a needs. We're trying to survive. Yeah, it's needs. Whereas, in a city, it's more about getting ahead and, I mean, survival as well. But that's at that point, unless you're just in the, poverty, most people in the city are going to they're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to do something specific. Yeah. There's a reason they're in the city.
Again, if you have an overarching theme for your entire nation, you can have it be foreshadowed, right? So if there's a war going on, when you show up, people are getting drafted, and you can have it be like either this like brave moment of like all of them are super ready and like that implies something about the war that they think they're fighting for it, or you can have the draft happen and you see people upset and crying and it's the beginning of Hunger Games, or they're like, no, my boy got drafted. I'm so sad he's going to go to die. That also says something inherently about the government and the war itself, is that no one likes this war. Maybe it's gone on for too long. Maybe they don't think it's a just war. But that says something, like even just that simple plot hook of like outside of it, you see the draft happening and you see this army getting ready to go to war. That how you talk about that, how you describe it can change the outlook of the entirety.
Yeah, 100%. So we kind of briefly touched on this a little bit. What are the things that are like absolute must? What are the things you must have in a city? And I know it'll change from city to city, but for the most part, what are the things in a generic city that people need to have for their campaigns?
You'll see a lot of people argue that you need to have what is the way that their economic resource started, like the material or whatever cost, and you'll say like, okay, then how did it expand? I'm going to make an argument you don't need that, because most players do not care about that stuff. In fact, you don't even need to think about that first. It can literally be something you think about off the top of your head, right? It could be the whole like, how does this city make its money? Spice. Oh, okay. And then that's it, right? And then it's like, cool, we don't have to go any further into it. Most players do not care about that stuff. What they do care about is quests, NPCs they can interact with, and cool locations, right? And literally when I do this, I might take a picture of like my notes from part of my campaign and just show it really quick. I break it down. Locations, people, factions, and quests. And that is just quick reference to all of those things. And I get like little blurbs about each location, person, place, or thing. If you can, have like a little bit of gambling somewhere in the city.
Some sort of game,
Yeah, some mini game where like the players come in and they go to the tavern because they think that's where they're going to get all the information. It's like, cool, you see some cards being played in the back. I'm going to go play some cards. Cool. Now we're going to play a fun game where I'm going to roll a d20 and then you have to roll a d10 and then like you just figure out some cool way of like gambling from there. But yeah, having like some sort of obvious location where the party can immediately go to. While you're describing it, if it's like you walk into the city, You see trash adorned everywhere, homeless people, trying to cling on to you to get some amount of wealth or money. And then you see this giant tower in the middle of the city overlooking everything.
Yeah.
Well, now the party's like, what the heck is that tower? We should probably look at it.
Yeah. I think the closer a city represents to a city, like even like an actual, like in real life, in our actual world. Because again, there are like wealth disparities. It's like, so there's people who are poor. Most of us have seen a homeless person or something like that. That it makes it feel more immersive, more realistic. When you have like, again, you don't have to go super political about it if you don't want to, but like you want to be able to see things that like this feels like a city.
So again, when I world build, each continent kind of has a theme.
Right.
And so then you can have the city play off of that theme. So for example, in one of my worlds in Dolaris, the theme is kind of this idea of they are technologically behind everybody. Everyone else is developing magic super weapons or like insane arcane knowledge, and they're like slowly behind. So the king at the time is like, cool, scientific. That's where we're going. This city, you guys got to work on steampunk. This city over here, figure out how to make black powder. This city over here, magic, whatever, thingamabobs. I don't care. And so you walk into one city and it's a bunch of tinkerers and it's like really sci-fi and they're like making it work, but things are exploding constantly and not working. And that's a super interesting, like immediate visual.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Especially if you contrast it with like the wetlands where it's like, yeah, the walls are put together kind of barely. We don't have a lot of money. We have this center wall that helps us as a fort. And that's about it.
Yeah.
That's what we got. Versus this other place where it's like automatic, Gatling turrets are just tracking your movement every second. You can have that kind of like obvious disparity and be like, wow, that's interesting. What's happening here? And that says something about the government.
Okay, let's talk about, let's make our own city.
All right. Perfect, Charles. So the first thing you have to start with is no. You don't have to start with a name. Honestly, you can come up with that first. You can come up with it later. I like to come up with names first because sometimes that actually does make you think of stuff.
So I have an idea. So we'll come up with the city and everything. Commenters, come up with a name for the city for us.
Cool. All right, perfect. So then what do you want to start with? Again, I like to start with like what's the reason the people are coming to the city, and then
I like that too. I don't know if I wanted to do research. I like your way of entertainment. I think it'd be cool. Like maybe there's this.
I mean, I'm literally thinking of our next campaign of thinking of a city where it's like, instead of the Colosseum, it's a maze like a labyrinth. That's the entertainment is you put people in the labyrinth. It's always constantly changing, kind of like in the TV show or in the movie, right? Yeah. They have that arena that's constantly changing. Yeah. Like that's their form of entertainment that everyone comes to see. You have stuff like that. So we could do something like that where it's like, maybe it's even like a thespian stage that like is so immersive that it's like, people are like, I loved it. And then when you start to ask people like, oh, what play was being played? Ironically, they keep coming back with like the same answers. Like it's different names, but it's like, I really loved it. It was so immersive. I really loved it. It was so immersive. What was your favorite part? All of it was just so good because it was so immersive.
Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go with that concept.
So an enchanting theater.
Enchanting theater.
So naturally, that means the kind of people mostly living there are actors, theater kids, right? Like it's a much more artistic community.
So I think some of your NPCs, at least one of them, you're going to be kind of over the top.
Oh,
for
100%.
Sure.
Just you walk in,
hello. Yeah,
like much. Literally, what if that's what happens? You guys walk into the city, and before you can even take in the sights, a man in a jester's costume comes out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bearded. I am your humble tour guide. If you wish payment. No, well, ta-ta for now. Ooh, and then he disappears.
Yeah, very much so. Absolutely. Again, so at that point, I think you will hopefully have your players' attention. At least the narrative ones you will.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna be like, "What the crap?
What just happened here?"
Right.
So, all right. So we have our thing. What's the next thing we need is?
I mean, some faction. So you have the theater troupe that's in charge, obviously. Yeah. So they could probably be on the nose with their name, where it's like enchanting entertainment.
Yeah. Enchanté.
They
give me French.
Yeah, and you can have literally you could have it be like that, where it's like that is the theater company. They're the ones in charge. And then you have like the merchant company, who are maybe the more like down to earth people.
Yeah. They're like, I'm just trying to sell some bread.
Oh no, and these guys jesters came back.
Oh no, don't need the jesters back.
Hello and welcome to my mystical shop of wonders. And he just like throws confetti.
So it was a glitter.
And the party's like, why did you do that? And it's like,
I'm required to by law.
exactly.
Oh, that's so good.
Exactly. See, we're already having fun. This is a super interesting city. This is where, like, again, we just come up with a concept and natural questions are going to start forming. What is there a town guard? And if so, are they genuinely there to like stop people from doing bad things? Or is it more of like the theater part of it?
I think what they're there for is like, if they're causing harm, they'll go into action. But if it's for entertainment, like pranks and stuff like that, they're kind of like in support of.
I like to think that most of the guard is actually not that serious.
Yeah.
Like
For sure.
They're literally like actors who are like, yeah, I just got to play this guard role for another year and then I get a chance to audition for the theater role.
That's a really good thing too, is that instead of having jobs, these are roles.
Yes.
It's all just a giant performance. So everyone has roles. I'm the merchant.
And so what happens is you actually audition rather than like apply to be a job.
Oh, I love it.
And then you could have a really cool thing when people turn a certain age, they have a ceremony where it's like, congratulations, based off of your audition, you shall be guard number 5. Yay.
Yeah, they lose their name and everything. They're just guard number 5.
Or just something like that.
Yeah, that would be great.
That could be a very interesting city.
Oh, for sure.
And so again, naturally you have the theater troupe that's like everything's about the performance. You have the merchant guild who's like, gosh, we just wish there could be a normal city. Is there a third faction?
If there was, what would it be? What
you could have a thieves guild that maybe is like half a part of it. Like, again, it's like they play up the whole like, oh, and there's the evil thieves guild. You know me.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, like they're not even hiding their thieves. They're just like because they're playing the role.
So then you have
sure.
an actual thieves guild that's like, okay, cool. While they're doing their fake heist over there, we're gonna actually go rob these people here.
Yeah, 100%. Like it'd be almost like a secret faction.
Yeah, and so you have the merchants and the thieves guild, and the thieves guild keeps stealing from the merchants. The merchants want the thieves guild stopped, but the people in charge
don't take it seriously.
Take it seriously enough. And so there you go, and there's your plot hook.
Yeah.
Like, can we the party convince the theater people to go like to be like, hey, serious, take this seriously, or maybe you are like merchants, lighten up. Or maybe you guys are the ones who fight the Thieves Guild and take them out on your own. And now it's like, cool, everyone's kind of their own thing, but we took out the group that's doing all the harm for now.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe now you've managed to make an enemy of a faction, of a Thieves Guild faction, that maybe this wasn't their main hub. It was another city or something. 100%. And then now you're being chased or hunted down.
Or conversely, you join them, and now you have future options.
Yeah. So again, there's so many ways you can manipulate this city into doing things. And again, you don't need and again, as you can tell, you don't need a whole lot. I mean, you could have a bank, you could have whatever, just decide. It could be any kind of merchant. Like I said, it could be someone who sells bread. It could be someone who sells magical trinkets or non-magical trinkets. It could be an armorer, whatever.
You have to know. They put the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker next to each other.
Yeah, just for the rhyming scheme.
Just literally, it's called the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. That's what their shops are called.
What do you do? I make candlesticks.
It's like, is that important? They say it is.
It's a very niche job.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how easy it can be
to
just come up with a city. Literally just come up with the weirdest idea you can. Or like just some sort of plot hook for the city. When you walk in, it's steampunk. When you walk in, there's magic everywhere. When you walk in, there's a theater troupe that's somehow in charge of the entire city.
So, and maybe the question is, how do they become in charge of the entire city?
I've implied that they are just magically like charming everybody, and so it's like, well, it's the Family Guy joke where it's like, this is the best show ever.
Yeah. So and again, you don't have to go that route. You can go a more serious route if you want. If you want to really drive in that political intrigue, then is the government corrupt? If not, is there someone who's trying to corrupt it? Like what are things that you want to see in your city? That's what and the more you put into it, the more your players will get out of it.
Always be careful about how much you put into it, because
the
amount of effort you put into something, maybe a fourth of that is how much time the players get to spend into it.
Correct.
So if you're over here thinking about the economics and the importance of that, that's cool and that's fine. Just recognize your players are probably not going to explore those options. They're not going to necessarily care too much about that stuff. You could have quests that make that stuff important.
Correct.
But recognize like the amount of effort you put in is not always equal to the amount of effort the players are going to put in.
So if you want your players to care about it, you got to give them a reason to care about it.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you care about this political corruption type stuff, you're going to have to find a way to make your players care about that political corruption.
I will say, honestly, tip from me, I am a top-down world builder.
Yeah.
So like we just discussed how you build a city from nothing. Sometimes what I like to do is build out the map and then say, here's where a city is, here's where a city is. And then I'll even name the city and I won't flesh it out. I'll just be like, this is a city, this is where it's located. And then once the party starts making their way that way, or maybe a player has decided that's their hometown, that's when I start fleshing it out. And that's when it starts to become more important, because it makes less work for me, but it creates the illusion of this place is bigger than it actually is.
Right.
So I would recommend that. And then you could even have like, okay, if they're near the mountains, here's some ideas for mountain cities, and leave it at that. And then once they start going to a mountain city, you find out, oh, this one seems the most interesting. Put it there. So.
Yeah, and also depending on geographical where you're at too, can also help inform what your resource will be.
Yeah.
If you're near the ocean, maybe it's fish. Near a mountain, maybe it's some sort of ore. If it's near a forest, maybe it's trees.
Absolutely.
So
anyway, we hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Again, what would we name this dumb magical city that enchants people for the sake of the theater?
For the theater.
Let us know down below.
Please and stay with it.
Oh, we're just gonna immediately go into that. No fanfare.
Stay with it.
Yay.